Dallin Rourke walked through the crowded market of the starport, his boots clicking on the metal floor. The air smelled of hot oil, burnt fuel, and something strange he could not name. Merchants shouted in alien languages, selling parts, gadgets, and creatures of every kind. Humans were not common here, but Dallin had learned to keep his head down and his eyes open. Today he was not looking for tools or spare engines. He was looking at creatures. Rows of cages lined the platform. Some held bright, scaly beasts that hissed and snapped at each other. Others were small, soft, and harmless looking. Most creatures were expensive, some costing hundreds or even thousands of credits. Dallin did not have much money. He worked as a mechanic, repairing starships and machines, saving every credit he could. He could not afford the big, strong dragons everyone else wanted. They were meant for warriors and hunters, not humans like him. In the far corner, something small and scrawny caught his eye. It was a dragon, but unlike the ones he had seen in holo ads or in the stories of war heroes. Its scales were dull brown with a faint shimmer, its wings were bent slightly, and its tail was thin and weak. The dragon's eyes glowed amber, but they did not shine with pride or fire. They looked tired, scared, and small. It shivered in the corner of its cage, huddled close to a dirty rag. The vendor, a large alien with 3 arms and a rough voice, laughed when he saw Dallin staring. "That one? Worthless," the alien said. "No strength, no fight, no value. I'm almost giving it away." Other buyers snickered. "Why, look at that thing. A human buying that? Pathetic," one said, shaking its head. The dragon hissed softly, backing into the corner of its cage. Dallin crouched down, keeping his voice low and calm. "It's scared," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. He could feel something in the creature, a small spark. Most people only saw size, strength, or price. Dallin looked deeper. "How much?" he asked. The alien smirked. 3 credits. That's it. Take it or leave it. But you will regret it. 3 credits. Less than a meal at the starport, less than a day's work fixing a small engine. But Dallin did not hesitate. He pulled out his coins and handed them to the vendor. "I'll take it," he said simply. The alien barked a laugh. "You have lost your mind, human. Here, don't expect it to do anything." He pushed the cage forward, and Dallin carefully lifted it. The dragon hissed, small and weak, but did not bite. It flinched when his hands touched its scales, but it did not fight. Dallin carried the cage to his workshop, a small metal building filled with tools, engine parts, and the smell of oil. He set it down on the floor, speaking softly. "It's okay. You're safe now." The dragon blinked, tilting its head as if trying to understand. Its wings twitched nervously. He opened the cage and offered some scraps of food, small pieces of synthetic meat. The dragon sniffed, hesitated, and then ate carefully. Dallin smiled. "Not much appetite, huh?" he said. The dragon hissed softly in reply, like a small growl of warning. That night, after the starport grew quiet and most creatures slept, the dragon moved closer to Dallin. It stepped on shaky legs, its claws tapping lightly on the floor. It sniffed at him, studying his face, and let out a soft, quiet roar. It was not a loud, powerful roar. It was small, almost sad, but it carried a feeling Dallin could not describe. Something like trust. Dallin leaned down and whispered, "I don't know what you can do. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But I will help you." The dragon's amber eyes seemed to shine a little brighter. It circled him slowly and pressed its head against his arm. Dallin felt a small spark of hope. The next morning, Dallin began working with the dragon. He cleared a small area of his workshop for it to move and stretched its wings gently. Most creatures bought for strength were forced into training, but Dallin had learned from machines that stress and fear break more than they build. So he worked slowly, carefully, with patience. The dragon responded in small ways. Its wings flapped more strongly after each day. Its claws gripped the floor firmly. And every night, when Dallin knelt near it and spoke softly, the little creature would let out that soft roar again. Dallin began to think of it not as worthless but as unshaped. Not weak but undiscovered. Other humans in the starport began noticing. "Why do you waste your time on that scrawny thing?" they asked. "It will never fight. It will never matter." Dallin just shook his head. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe it will matter in ways you cannot see yet." And then late one night the first real sign of power came. The dragon, which had been quiet all evening, suddenly hissed sharply. Sparks flew from its mouth, small harmless sparks at first, but enough to singe the metal floor. Dallin's eyes widened. You can do that?" he whispered. The dragon blinked and hissed again, a warning, and the sparks danced along its scales. Its eyes glowed brighter than ever. Dallin knelt in front of it, careful and slow. "I will not hurt you," he said. The dragon tilted its head, sniffing the air, and then, just once, let out a roar that shook the walls. It was not big yet, but it was loud enough to make Dallin smile. "This is only the beginning," he whispered. By the time the first sun of the system rose, the little dragon had curled up near Dallin's feet. It was not just a creature he bought for 3 credits. It was a partner, a mystery, and perhaps, in time, something far more than anyone in the starport had imagined. The spark of power, hidden beneath its fragile wings, waited to be discovered, and Dallin knew that he would be the one to help it grow. The market, the laughter, the doubts, all of it faded from his mind. In its place was a strange, quiet hope. For now the dragon was small, scrawny, and called worthless. But Dallin knew better. He could see the fire inside, and it had just begun to roar. Dallin woke to the soft glow of the twin suns outside his workshop. The little dragon stirred at his feet, stretching its small wings carefully. Its eyes followed him as he moved, bright amber glinting with curiosity. Dallin smiled and crouched beside it. "Good morning," he said. "Ready to try again?" The dragon had grown slightly since the day he bought it. Its scales were shinier, and its small wings flapped a little stronger. But it was still scrawny compared to the strong dragons others bought for battle. Most humans would have laughed at it, just as the market buyers had. But Dallin had learned something important. Strength was not always visible. He cleared the floor of tools and scraps and motioned for the dragon to move. "Come on," he said softly. "Try your wings." The dragon hesitated, shaking slightly. Its tail curled nervously and it made a low hiss. Dallin knelt down, careful not to look threatening. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon blinked, taking a small step forward. It tested its wings, flapping them slowly. Dallin watched with pride. "Good," he said. "That's good. Take your time." Most people believed dragons had to be forced to obey. They used fear, threats, or pain to make them strong. Dallin believed something different. He believed that respect, patience, and kindness could bring out a dragon's true strength. He had seen machines respond better when treated carefully. Perhaps living creatures worked the same way. 4 days, Dallin worked with the dragon. He fed it carefully, brushed its scales, and repaired the small wing that had been bent. He never yelled, never forced it. Sometimes the dragon would flinch or back away, but Dallin waited. Slowly the dragon began to trust him. One evening he tried something new. He knelt on the floor, bringing his eyes to the dragon's level. "You are stronger than you think," he said softly. "I believe in you." The dragon tilted its head, staring at him. It hissed softly, then let out a tiny roar. Sparks danced faintly along its scales, more than ever before. Dallin's heart leaped. "You see," he whispered, "you don't have to fight like others want you to. You only have to be yourself." Other humans in the starport began noticing Dallin's unusual approach. Workers and merchants would stop by the workshop, peeking through the windows. "Why do you waste your time on that scrawny thing?" one human asked. "It will never be strong. You could train a real dragon in the same time." Dallin shook his head. "Strength is not only muscles or fire," he said. "It is loyalty, courage, and heart. You don't see it yet, but it's there." Some of the aliens laughed when they heard this. "Only humans think small things matter," one sneered. But the dragon, for the first time, responded not with fear but with curiosity. It crept closer to Dallin's side, pressing against him, and hissed softly, a sound of recognition. One day, Dallin tried to test the dragon's wings again. He set up a small platform a few meters above the floor. "See that?" he said. "You can try to jump up there if you want. I will catch you if you fall." The dragon stared at the platform, then looked back at Dallin. Its tail twitched nervously. Dallin knelt and whispered, "I trust you. You can do it." Slowly the dragon ran forward and leapt. Its wings flapped weakly at first, but it reached the platform. Dallin cheered quietly. "Good. Excellent." The dragon hissed and flapped its wings again. Sparks of energy danced faintly along its scales. Dallin's belief in respect and patience was working. He realized that the dragon's power would never come from force. It came from trust. That night, Dallin sat near the dragon as it curled up beside him. "You did well today," he said. The dragon nudged him softly with its snout and hissed in approval. Dallin smiled. "I know you are thinking. You are not just a small dragon. You are something more. I can feel it." The next morning, the starport was busy as usual. Merchants shouted, traders bargained, and alien creatures moved in cages. But Dallin and the dragon had a quiet corner. They trained in silence, away from the chaos. The dragon's wings grew stronger, its tail longer and steadier, and its roars louder and more confident. Other humans started talking quietly among themselves. "That human treats the dragon like a friend," one whispered. "I've never seen that before." Dallin did not answer. He focused on the dragon, knowing that the eyes of the world were not important. What mattered was trust. One afternoon, Dallin tried something bold. He knelt again, bowed his head close to the dragon's, and spoke softly. "You do not have to fight for me. You only need to fight with me." The dragon blinked and hissed softly, then roared. Sparks flew along its scales brighter than before, lighting up the workshop. It was not a dangerous roar yet, but it was a roar of understanding, connection, and confidence. Dallin laughed quietly. "I knew you had it in you," he said. "I never doubted you." Word spread slowly but steadily. Visitors to the starport began to notice the unusual bond. They whispered about the human who did not train with threats, who treated his dragon with respect. Some laughed at first, but the dragon's growing power was hard to ignore. Its wings became stronger each day, its roars louder, and its body healthier. Dallin understood something important. The dragon would never be controlled by fear. It would never obey only because someone was stronger. Its strength, its loyalty, and its courage came from trust. And that was something no alien, no mercenary, and no machine could buy. By the end of the week, the dragon could leap higher than ever before. It followed Dallin closely, sometimes running ahead, sometimes watching him carefully. The sparks from its scales had become more frequent, though still small. But Dallin saw potential, power waiting to grow. He smiled at the creature, knowing that he had chosen the right approach. Respect, patience, and care could awaken what others called worthless. Dallin sat on the floor and let the dragon rest against him. "You are more than they think," he whispered. The dragon hissed softly, a quiet agreement. Dallin realized that in a world that judged by size, fire, and strength, humans could show something different. They could teach loyalty, respect, and courage. And sometimes that was the strongest power of all. The dragon curled up beside him as night fell, and Dallin felt the small, quiet warmth of trust. It was a start, and both knew the journey ahead would test them. But for the first time, Dallin believed that his small, scrawny dragon would one day roar in a way that the entire galaxy could not ignore. The starport was quieter than usual when Dallin opened the doors of his workshop. He had been working on repairing a small freighter, but his mind kept drifting to the dragon. The little creature had grown stronger each day, its wings longer, its roars louder, and its sparks brighter. Dallin knew that it was not a normal dragon. It was special, and he had a feeling that soon, its true strength would be tested. He was not wrong. A loud alarm echoed through the starport, followed by screaming and shouting. Aliens in black armor stormed the streets, capturing humans and forcing them into transport ships. Dallin froze, gripping a wrench. He could see the chaos from his workshop window. The attackers were large, armed with strange energy weapons and merciless. He watched as people ran, hiding behind crates and stalls. The little dragon, still small but alert, hissed and flapped its wings. Its amber eyes glowed, and Dallin could see sparks along its scales. It moved to his side, pressing against his leg as if to say, "We face this together." Dallin did not hesitate. He grabbed the dragon and ran outside, weaving through crates and panicked civilians. A group of raiders cornered a family near the dock. The humans were terrified, their hands raised. One of the aliens raised a weapon to strike, and the dragon hissed loudly, baring its small teeth. Dallin stopped and knelt, looking into the dragon's glowing eyes. "You don't have to fight for them because you have to," he whispered. "You fight because we are together. You can do this." The dragon hissed softly, then roared. Sparks of energy shot from its mouth, striking the ground in front of the raiders. They stumbled back, shielding their eyes as smoke and light filled the area. Dallin's heart raced. He had never seen the dragon use so much energy at once. It was still small, but the force behind it was enough to push the raiders back a few steps. The raiders recovered quickly, but Dallin could see their hesitation. The dragon hissed again, this time louder, wings flapping and claws scraping the metal floor. Its roar echoed through the starport, louder than any human voice. Civilians stared in shock, some whispering, "That small dragon, it is not what it seems." Dallin stood slowly, keeping close to the dragon. "We protect them," he said, pointing toward the family. The dragon leapt forward, sparks dancing along its wings. It did not attack blindly. It moved with purpose, blocking the raiders and guiding the humans to safety. The aliens fired their energy weapons, but the dragon's scales reflected some of the blasts, and Dallin dodged what came too close. One of the raiders shouted, realizing that this was no ordinary human or creature. The dragon, though small, was clever and coordinated. It roared again, sending a shockwave that knocked two raiders to the ground. Dallin moved quickly, helping the humans run behind crates. "Go," he shouted. "Keep moving." The dragon stayed close, moving its wings to create small gusts of wind that knocked the raiders off balance. Sparks flew along its body, glowing brighter than ever. After several minutes of struggle, the raiders retreated, realizing they had underestimated the human and his dragon. The family was safe, and Dallin knelt, letting the dragon curl against him. It hissed softly, tired but alert. Its wings trembled, but its eyes shone with pride. "You did it," Dallin whispered. "You protected them. You didn't fight because you had to, you fought because you wanted to. That's true strength." The humans around them stared in awe. A few whispered excitedly, "That human, he is brave. And that dragon, it is not weak at all." Dallin smiled but said nothing. He knew this was only the beginning. Later, when the starport quieted down, Dallin examined the dragon. Its scales had small scorch marks and its wings were sore, but it had survived. More than that, it had shown courage. Dallin gently touched its head. "You see? They called you worthless, but look what you did. You saved lives." The dragon hissed softly in response, nudging his hand. Dallin could feel the connection between them stronger than ever. Trust had turned into something more, loyalty and understanding. That night, Dallin thought about the events of the day. Most humans had never faced aliens like that. Most dragons were trained to obey, to fight, or to serve. But his dragon had chosen to act because it wanted to, because it trusted him and the people they were helping. Dallin realized that the galaxy might never understand humans fully, but moments like this showed a different side of strength. Strength was not always measured in size, firepower, or numbers. Sometimes strength was in heart, in trust, and in courage. And that small, scrawny dragon had more of all three than anyone could see. The next day, news spread slowly through the starport. Traders whispered about the human who faced the raiders with nothing but a dragonling. Merchants talked about how the small dragon had thrown back a group of dangerous aliens. Some laughed, thinking the story exaggerated. But a few had seen it and they knew it was true. Dallin and the dragon continued their work, but their bond had grown stronger. The dragon was no longer just a pet or a creature. It was a partner, a defender, and a small spark of hope for humans who were often overlooked and underestimated. Dallin looked down at the dragon as it curled at his feet that night. "You did well," he whispered. "The first test is over. But there will be more. And when they come, we will face them together." The dragon hissed softly, then let out a small roar that echoed faintly through the workshop. Sparks flickered along its scales, brighter than ever. Dallin smiled, knowing that the little creature had learned something important that day. It had learned to fight, yes, but more importantly, it had learned to trust, to choose, and to act because it wanted to. And that, Dallin knew, was the beginning of something far greater than anyone could imagine. The small, scrawny dragon, once called worthless, had passed its first real test. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. The little dragon had grown noticeably since Dallin first bought it. Its wings were stronger, and the amber glow of its eyes had become sharper, brighter, almost like molten gold. Sparks danced along its scales more often now, small bursts that lit up the workshop at night. But the dragon's strength was not just in its fire or claws, it was in the bond it shared with Dallin. Dallin had begun to understand the limits of fear and force. The dragon did not obey because it was forced, it obeyed because it chose to. That choice had awakened a kind of power Dallin had never seen before. He watched the dragon carefully as it practiced leaping and flapping, wings slicing the air, claws gripping the floor. Every motion seemed to carry intention. Every roar carried purpose. One morning, a distress call came over Dallin's communicator. A small human colony on a nearby asteroid was under attack. Raiders had landed, and the colony had no weapons strong enough to resist them. Dallin felt a surge of urgency. He glanced at the dragon, which tilted its head and hissed softly. Dallin smiled. "It's time," he said. "We go." The starship ride was quiet, the dragon curled in a small crate lined with soft metal. Dallin monitored the colony's communications, planning the safest approach. The closer they got, the more Dallin felt the dragon's excitement. Its tail flicked nervously, wings twitching slightly. He knew the little creature understood the danger, and that it wanted to face it. When they arrived, the colony was in chaos. Buildings were damaged, fires burned, and the raiders were rounding up humans. Dallin opened the crate, and the dragon stepped out, hesitating only a moment before spreading its wings. Sparks ran along its scales, and its roar echoed across the rocky terrain. The raiders stopped in their tracks, confused. None had expected such a display from a small dragon. One shouted, "It's just a hatchling. Kill it." But the dragon did not move to attack blindly. It studied the raiders, watching their positions, then leapt forward. Its claws scraped the ground, sending small shockwaves that tripped the raiders and knocked their weapons aside. Sparks flew from its body, striking the ground and creating blinding flashes. Dallin ran alongside the dragon, directing humans to safety. "Over here. Go, go," he shouted. The dragon moved with him, flanking the raiders, forcing them back with its agility and bursts of energy. It was small, yes, but it fought with intelligence and coordination. Dallin realized something important. Raw power was not enough. Strategy, courage, and trust amplified even the smallest strength. One raider advanced toward Dallin, weapon raised. The dragon leapt between them, wings flaring, claws extended. Sparks erupted along its body as it roared, a sound that carried authority beyond its size. The raider fell back, stumbling, and Dallin knew that the dragon had learned to fight not out of fear but out of choice. The humans in the colony watched in awe. "That dragon, it's amazing," one whispered. "And the human, he's not just a mechanic." Another added, "They fight as one. I've never seen anything like it." Dallin knelt briefly, catching his breath. "You're doing well," he said softly to the dragon. The dragon hissed in acknowledgement, sparks flickering brighter along its scales. Every movement it made now seemed deliberate, precise. Its body had grown, but even more importantly, its mind had grown. The battle lasted only a few hours, but it left a strong impression. The raiders fled, confused and injured, unable to defeat a single human paired with a dragonling. Dallin helped the colony rebuild what he could, but the real victory was clear. The dragon had learned something vital. Its strength came not from size, but from unity, courage, and trust. That night, Dallin sat on a rocky ledge with the dragon curled beside him. The twin moons reflected off the dragon's scales, making it glow like liquid fire. "You've come far," Dallin whispered. "More than anyone expected. More than I even expected." The dragon hissed softly, pressing against him as if understanding. Dallin thought about the day's battle. He had seen countless creatures in markets and cages, creatures strong in body but weak in heart. This dragon, once called worthless, had shown that power was more than muscle. It was loyalty. It was intelligence. It was courage that chose its moment. The next morning, Dallin and the dragon returned to the starport. News of their deeds spread slowly, carried by whispers and hollow recordings. Merchants, humans, and aliens alike began to take notice. "The human and the hatchling dragon," one trader muttered. "They fought off a raider group without weapons. Incredible." Dallin did not care about fame. He cared about the dragon. He had seen the moment when it realized that it could make a choice, and that choice was powerful. Respect had unlocked something in the creature, a kind of strength no one could sell, buy, or force. Over the next days, the dragon continued to grow, not just in size but in ability. Sparks ran along its scales whenever it was excited or focused. Its wings could create gusts of wind strong enough to knock over small objects. Its roar carried further and sounded more commanding. But most importantly, it listened, watched, and made decisions. It no longer reacted only to Dallin's commands, it acted with understanding. Dallin watched the dragon practice one evening. It flapped its wings, ran in circles, and then leapt high, creating a small whirlwind. Sparks danced along its scales, bright and fierce. Dallin knelt, reaching out a hand. "You've awakened your power," he whispered. "Not because of me but because of what you are. And we will see how far it can go." The dragon hissed, a sound full of energy and recognition. It pressed against his hand, then let out a roar that echoed across the empty starport. It was not a roar of fear or of anger or even of challenge. It was a roar of identity, of trust, and of potential. Dallin smiled, knowing the journey ahead would test both of them. The galaxy had seen only a glimpse of what humans and dragons could achieve together. Soon, the little dragon that had been called worthless would show the universe what true power meant. And Dallin knew without a doubt that the awakening had only just begun. News of the little dragon and Dallin's courage spread quickly across the starport and neighboring colonies. At first, many laughed at the story, thinking it exaggerated. A scrawny human with a small dragon driving off raiders seemed impossible. But those who had seen it knew the truth. Whispers grew into conversations. Conversations grew into awe. and soon the name of Dallin Rourke and his dragon traveled farther than he expected. Dallin did not seek fame. He had never cared for glory or medals. He only cared about the dragon, its well-being, and what they could accomplish together. But the world could not ignore them. People began to watch as Dallin trained, and the dragon grew stronger, more confident, and more intelligent with each passing day. Its wings stretched further, its scales shimmered brighter, and its sparks became small displays of controlled energy. Merchants and humans who once laughed now approached cautiously. "I saw what you did," one human said quietly. "I never thought a human could do that, or that a dragon like that could fight like it did." Dallin smiled, shrugging. "It is not about being the strongest," he said. "It is about trust, respect, courage. That is what makes us strong." Even aliens who had once dismissed humans began to take notice. Some studied Dallin and the dragon from afar, intrigued by the unusual bond. Others whispered warnings to their friends, questioning how humans, often underestimated, could produce such clever strategies with such small resources. The dragon, still small compared to most creatures of its kind, became a symbol. It was no longer worthless. It was a sign that strength could be found in unexpected places, when nurtured with care and respect. The starport changed slowly. People began treating creatures differently. Merchants who had once punished weak or sick animals now observed how Dallin cared for the dragon. They noticed that kindness and patience could unlock hidden potential. Young humans and alien apprentices began to emulate his approach, watching how the dragon responded to calm words, gentle gestures, and trust. One day an alien ship arrived at the port, carrying a delegation of traders. Their leader, a tall creature with many eyes, came directly to Dallin. "We have heard stories," it said. "A human and its dragon fought raiders. You have skills unusual for your species. We wish to understand." Dallin knelt slightly, showing respect. "It is not only me," he said. "The dragon chose to act. I only gave guidance and trust. That is what made the difference." The alien studied the dragon, which stood nearby, wings folded neatly and tail curling around its feet. The little creature's eyes glowed with quiet power, a calm that contradicted the chaos it could unleash. "Interesting," the alien said. "Your kind may be underestimated. Perhaps they have more to offer than we realized." Back in the starport, Dallin and the dragon continued their daily routine. They repaired ships, trained, and sometimes helped humans or aliens in need. The dragon's roars had become more commanding, its sparks controlled, its wings capable of creating wind strong enough to move heavy objects. But its most impressive trait remained its intelligence and judgment. It no longer acted blindly. It chose to act with thought, courage, and loyalty. Dallin often reflected on the journey. He remembered the first day he bought the dragon for 3 credits, when merchants laughed and the creature cowered in its cage. Now it had grown into a symbol showing that strength was not always about size, firepower, or fear. Strength came from heart, trust, and courage. Humans who had once doubted themselves began to look at Dallin and the dragon as inspiration. Children watched the dragon practice, imagining what they could accomplish if they approached challenges with care and understanding. Traders who had dismissed humans as weak now sought advice. Some asked how to train creatures without cruelty. Others simply watched and learned. One evening, Dallin and the dragon sat atop a platform overlooking the starport. Sparks from the dragon's scales lit the night softly, reflecting in the eyes of those who watched. A small group of humans approached, hesitant but curious. "Can we learn from you?" one asked. Dallin smiled. "Yes," he said. "But the lesson is simple. Treat others with respect. Trust them. Give them a choice. You may be surprised what they can do." The dragon nudged him gently, pressing against his side. Its amber eyes glowed with quiet pride. It had come far from the small, weak creature in the corner of a market cage. It had learned to fight, to protect, and to lead, not because it had been forced but because it chose to. And the humans and aliens around it began to understand that choice was true power. By sunrise, the starport was alive with chatter. Dallin's reputation had grown beyond the port, reaching nearby colonies. People began to see that humans, often underestimated, could inspire loyalty and courage in creatures no matter their size. They realized that true strength was not measured only in battles or numbers, but in the ability to guide, nurture, and act with integrity. Dallin looked at the dragon as it roared softly, sparks flickering along its wings. He whispered, "We've done well, my friend. The galaxy may never see humans the same way again." The dragon hissed in acknowledgement, curling against him, and let out a small but proud roar. The two of them were no longer just a mechanic and a dragon. They were a team, a symbol of hope and courage. The galaxy had learned a lesson that no weapon or warship could teach, that even the smallest, seemingly worthless creature could show greatness, if treated with care and respect, and that humans often dismissed could awaken that greatness. From that day forward, Dallin and the dragon traveled the stars together, helping where they could, inspiring those who watched and showing the universe that strength came in many forms. A dragon bought for 3 credits had changed the perception of humans forever. And the galaxy would never underestimate them again.